the Catholic Men's Podcast, helping you find good works of literature for the Catholic gentleman. The Legend of Black Shuck, the Fiend Hound. Black Shuck, or simply Shuck, is the name given to an unknown creature said to roam in East Anglia. Black Shuck is one of the many ghostly black dogs recorded across the British Isles. The famous sighting in Bungay and Blythburgh is a particularly famous account of the beast, and images of black, sinister dogs have become part of the iconography of the area. Sometimes recorded as an omen of death, sometimes a more companionable animal, it is classified as a cryptid. For centuries, inhabitants of England have told tales of a large black dog with malevolent flaming eyes, or in some variants of the legend, one single eye, that are red or alternatively green. These eyes are described as being like saucers. In some accounts, it only has one eye, which is in the middle of its forehead like a cyclops. There are varying accounts of the Black Shuck's appearance, especially in size. According to reports, the beast varies in size and stature from that of simply a large dog to being the size of a calf or even a horse. Sometimes Black Shuck is recorded as having appeared headless, and at other times as floating on a carpet of mist. However, it is generally described as about the size of a mastiff, with shaggy black fur and glowing red eyes. W.A. Dutt, in his 1901 Highways and Byways in East Anglia, describes the creature thus: "He takes the form of a huge black dog and prowls along dark lanes and lonesome field footpaths where, although his howling makes the hearer's blood run cold, his footfalls make no sound. You may know him at once, should you see him, by his fiery eye. He has but one, and that, like the Cyclops, is in the middle of his head. But such an encounter might bring you the worst of luck. It is even said that to meet him is to be warned that your death will occur before the end of the year. So you will do well to shut your eyes if you hear him howling. Shut them even if you are uncertain whether it is the dog fiend or the voice of the wind you hear. Should you never set eyes on our Norfolk Snarlyow, you may perhaps doubt his existence, and, like other learned folks, tell us that his story is nothing but the old Scandinavian myth of the Black Hound of Odin, brought to us by the Vikings who long ago settled down on the Norfolk coast." One of the most notable reports of Black Shuck is of his appearance at the churches of Bungay and Blythburgh in Suffolk. On the 4th of August, 1577, at Blythburgh, Black Shuck is said to have burst in through the church doors to a clap of thunder. He ran up the nave, past a large congregation, killing a man and a boy and causing the church steeple to collapse through the roof. As the dog left, he left scorch marks on the north door, which can be seen at the church to this day. The encounter on the same day at Bungay was described in A Strange and Terrible Wonder by the Reverend Abraham Fleming in 1577. Adams was a clergyman from London, and therefore probably only published his account based on exaggerated oral accounts. Other local accounts attribute the event to the devil. Abrahams calls the animal the devil in such a likeness. The scorch marks on the door are referred to by the locals as the devil's fingerprints, and the event is remembered in this verse: "All down the church in midst of fire the hellish monster flew, and passing onward to the choir he many people slew." Dr. David Waldron and Christopher Reeve suggest that a fierce electrical storm recorded by contemporary accounts on that date, coupled with the trauma of the ongoing Reformation, may have led to the accounts entering folklore. Many suggest that this creature originated, or at least became more well-known, from the Sherlock Holmes novel The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Dr. Simon Sherwood suggests that the earliest surviving description of devilish black hounds is an account of an incident in Peterborough Abbey recorded in the Peterborough Chronicle, one of the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, around 1127. This account also appears to describe the Europe-wide phenomenon of a wild hunt. Let no one be surprised at the truth of what we are about to relate, for it was common knowledge throughout the whole country that immediately after Abbot Henry of Poto's arrival at Peterborough Abbey, it was the Sunday when they sing Exsurge Quare, many men both saw and heard a great number of huntsmen hunting. The huntsmen were black, huge, and hideous, and rode on black horses and on black he-goats, and their hounds were jet black with eyes like saucers and horrible. This was seen in the very deer park of the town of Peterborough, and in all the woods that stretch from that same town to Lincolnshire, Stamford, and in the night the monks heard them sounding and winding their horns. Reliable witnesses who kept watch in the night declared that there might well have been as many as 20 or 30 of them winding their horns as near as they could tell. This was seen and heard from the time of his arrival all through Lent and right up to Easter. According to some legends, the dog's appearance bodes ill to the beholder. For example, in the Essex Maldon and Dengie area of Essex, the most southerly point of sightings, where seeing Black Shuck means the observer's almost immediate death. However, more often than not, stories tell of Black Shuck terrifying his victims, but leaving them alone to continue living normal lives. In some cases, it has supposedly happened before close relatives to the observer die or become ill. By contrast, in other tales, the animal is regarded as relatively benign and said to accompany women on their way home in the role of protector rather than a portent of ill omen. Some black dogs have been said to help lost travelers find their way home and are more often helpful than threatening. Sherwood notes that benign accounts of the dog become more regular towards the end of the 19th and throughout the 20th centuries. The legend of Black Shuck is not to be confused with the legend of Squire Richard Cable of Brook Hall in the parish of Buckfastleigh, Devon, which was also said to inspire Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Cable lived for hunting, and was what in those days was described as a monstrously evil man. He gained this reputation, amongst other things, for immorality and having sold his soul to the devil. There was also a rumor that he had murdered his wife, Elizabeth Fowle, a daughter of Sir Edmund Fowle. On the 5th of July, 1677, he died and was buried in the sepulchre. The night of his interment saw a phantom pack of hounds come baying across the moor to howl at his tomb. From that night on, he could be found leading the phantom pack across the moor, usually on the anniversary of his death. If the pack were not hunting, they could be found ranging around his grave, howling and shrieking. To try to lay the soul to rest, the villagers built a large building around the tomb, and to be doubly sure, a huge slab was placed. So that's the end of what I have to read on Black Shuck. I only learned about the legend of Black Shuck this evening, and the reason why I immediately did a podcast about it is because, first of all, I'm really interested in the legend of the Hound of the Baskervilles, and I loved the book growing up. But secondly, there's a really important spiritual aspect to this. I can think of several cases where Protestant pastors failed to exorcise demons. They do imitations of Catholic ceremonies, but that's all it is. It's just a cheap imitation, and they usually end up screaming for priests. And this brings me to my final story, which is how St. Dominick expelled 15,000 devils from a heretic. While St. Dominick was preaching the rosary in Carcassonne, a heretic made fun of his miracles and the 15 mysteries of the rosary, and this prevented other heretics from being converted. As a punishment, God allowed 15,000 devils to enter the man's body. His parents took him to Father Dominick to be delivered from the evil spirits. He started to pray, and he begged everyone who was there to say the rosary out loud with him, and at each Hail Mary, Our Lady drove 100 devils out of the man, and they came out in the form of red-hot coals. After he had been delivered, he abjured his former errors, was converted, and joined the Rosary Confraternity. Several of his associates did the same, having been greatly moved by his punishment and by the power of the Rosary. Well, that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to pray the rosary every day. It's really important. Godspeed.